pin up the radiators on the corners. So on an E-ray, the radiators on the front, left and right, are a 28 millimeter thick radiator instead of a 35 millimeter thick radiator. The advantage for the E-ray in doing that is having less restriction on the backside allowed me to increase the airflow to the additional content that we needed for the high voltage system, for the E-ray itself. So the E-ray requires 3 different cooling systems in addition to the normal engine coolant. There's the one, which is the most obvious that you see on the car. You saw it in that little peak that we had when we first were teasing people about the E-ray. It's just barely visible in the commercial. But there's an oil to air cooler in the left side that is vertical. You can see the stone guard, that's the black plastic lines. That cools the actual drive unit itself. So the drive unit comes with ultra low viscosity trans fluid. I think Dave spoke about that in his presentation. And it has internal to it 2 12-volt pumps. One of the pumps is designed to move the fluid out of the drive unit out to my air and oil cooler in the front left side of the vehicle. And that's how we cool the drive unit itself. Now, in addition to that, there's the high voltage battery and what we call the power electronics, or the T-PIM. And the T-PIM is a traction power inverter module. And what it does is it moves the high voltage from the battery, all inside one same pack, up into the electric motor to make the motor move. So that unit, and I wish we had the cutaway car here because I could walk over and point to it, but after I get done presenting, I'll go back over there and I'll answer any questions, because you can see a significant amount of the details that I'm explaining here on that cutaway car, so it's great. I wish it was up here so I could point to it. But if you look at the E-ray cutaway car, you will see that up here in the front, there's a separate little surge tank, a little cap. That cap is for the 4060 coolant that we use to cool the T-PIN. And there's a 50-watt pump mounted on the cradle in this area right here. That cap that you see on there is common to the caps that we put on all of our electric vehicles, and it's a tamper-resistant cap. And the reason why we make it tamper-resistant, we don't want you opening it. The systems with the high voltage require that you use special coolant with deionized water as part of the mix. If you don't use deionized water, the minerals in the water will be quite corrosive in the high voltage systems. That's why we try to discourage customers from using or looking in that system. When you go in for the check, looked at, you'll be fine. So anyhow, so the way that that T-PIM system works is that it runs coolant off that 50-watt pump, and it runs it up to this condenser on the right-hand side of the vehicle. And as a quick review, when you look at the front of any of our Corvettes, the CA Corvettes, the left and the right, what you actually see isn't a radiator, but it's the condenser as part of the air conditioning system for the cabin comfort. So what we've done on this particular car, on the E-Ray, is we've sacrificed the last 8 tubes from the refrigerant side, and we've made that what we call a low temp loop. And the reason why we call it a low temp loop is the temperature of that system runs about half of what a normal engine system would run at temperature-wise. That's why we call it a low temp loop. So we run it through the bottom, and it comes out the top, and then it just circulates back into the T-PIN. Now, that's the second cooling circuit. Now, there's a third cooling circuit that's a lot more complicated because it actually involves 2 mediums. So in the back of the car, you'll notice that we have the same small cap and virtually the same bottle back in this area on the cutaway. That coolant is for the cells of the battery themselves. And the cells are designed with a cooling pouch in between the chemicals and the battery cell itself. And we run the coolant through that, and then we motivate it with a 30-watt pump that's mounted here on the cradle right about here. And it pushes the coolant through the battery it comes out, then it goes through this chiller. Now the chiller is a little plate cooler that's about 3 to 4 inches and a couple inches tall. That plate cooler is stacked plates, and it just looks like a small aluminum brick. But inside of it are alternating between refrigerant, and coolant. And that refrigerant is the same refrigerant that we use to cool the cabin. So what happens is the coolant moves through the chiller, exchanges the hot coolant from the heat from the battery, cools down from the refrigerant, then the refrigerant goes back into the system. It's the same refrigerant that cools the cabin, and it cools it at the front end of the vehicle when it cools off the refrigerant from that. That, in a nutshell, is how we cool the electric system. And what's very interesting about the battery, and we're working with a calibration team in Detroit, is that the battery likes to be warm. And I think probably Trevor spoke about this, but the battery likes to be warm, but not hot. So we like to keep it just a little bit below 40 degrees C, about 104 degrees. Once it reaches 40 degrees C to 44 degrees C, that's when we start turning down the cooling system to cool it. And it's fun to watch. I've been driving an eRay for about a week, 2 weeks. It's fun to watch the dynamometer and then to watch the temperature of the battery and to see where it starts getting warm. The battery will get warm on either discharge or charge. So whether you're on the brakes and charging the battery, or you're on the throttle and taking advantage of that power in that battery cell. So fundamentally, that's basically it. The rest of the cooling system, the fans, the main engine cooling system, is, like I said, very similar to what you see on a Z51. And that is pretty much the overview for the cooling of the eRays system. Does anybody have, oh sorry, the one thing I did want to mention, I forgot about the main system. Remember I mentioned that we have a carryover radiator in the center from the Z06? Just like the Z06, the front three radiators cool in parallel, meaning that they see the temperature coming out of the engine at the same time. It doesn't go through one and then the other and then the other. That would be called series. So we run it through parallel to get it at the same time. The reason why we run them in parallel is if you run things in parallel versus in series, the resistance is much lower, so it's much less load on the engine water pump, and it's not as what we call parasitic losses to the engine power. So I'll open it up. How'd I do? 10 minutes, not too bad. I'll open it up for questions if anybody has about the cooling system. Anybody have anything out there that you want to know? The question is there maintenance on the cooling system? It would follow the maintenance that we would do. It's in the owner's manual, and it would follow pretty much the standard. It has the same life cycle as you would see for the other cooling. I apologize, off the top of my head, yeah, never change it basically. I think it's like 100,000 miles, I don't remember. It's in the owner's manual, I actually have forgotten the details, so maybe one of these guys know, I don't remember it. Yeah, sorry. It's one of those things where I know it's there, I know it works, and I'm good. That's all I need. Yeah. The question is on the battery warranty. The battery warranty is 8 years, 100,000 miles. The rest of the car warranty is, anybody know off the top of their head? I don't know. I don't remember the warranty. Again, I'm an engineer working on the parts. I don't know the warranty. Does anybody, you know, what's the warranty on, like, I know the warranty on the battery and the drive unit, it's 8 years, 100,000 miles. What's the warranty on the other drivetrain? Is it the same? Yeah, it's the same? 5 year? 5 year and 100,000? Okay, thank you. It's just not something we deal with. Anybody else? Oh, you guys are too easy on me. Hit me with some technical questions. Yes, the question is the eRay the same as the Z06 wide body? And the answer is yes. We use the same panels. We have some uniqueness for this. We color this applique here on the Z06. It comes standard as, I forget the name of the color, but it's the black color. Whereas on this one's carbon flash, thank you. I forget my wife's name too. Yes, sir.
So are all three cooling systems, are they controlled by one computer, or are there multiple computers?
Oh, good question. The question is, are the three cooling systems controlled together for the hybrid cooling systems, correct? Yes. No. The drive unit has its own pump, and it moves the fluid through it as it needs to. So it does its own control. And I'll be honest, and I'd have to ask Dave Simpson, who was up here a few minutes ago, I don't know if the flow is constant or if it has, I believe it turns the pump on and off. So it's based on its internal temperatures. The TPIM loop as well as the res loop are controlled by themselves. The BSM controls the battery pump, and I think it might control the TPIM pump as well, but they're not keyed together. In other words, like for example, when you turn the car on, the TPIM gets up to temperature very rapidly. It's part of the electronics. So the minute you key the car on, that front pump is pretty much on. It's going. Whereas the one in the back, as I explained a few minutes ago, it won't turn that pump on until the battery gets up to 40 degrees to 44 degrees C, because it wants to let it get warm. So you could drive this car quite a bit depending on the ambient, the outside temperature, and you may not actually ever turn the pump on. It may circulate the fluid, it will heat up the battery, but you won't need the pump to circulate the fluid to keep the battery at the right temperature, because in cooler weather, it just never gets there. Anything else? I will be here all day. I'm also here tomorrow. Got another question? Yes, sir. From a cooling standpoint, or performance of the car? Yeah, the question is does the performance change based on different temperatures? In general, no. And the reason why I say it that way is, again, acting as a powertrain cooling person and looking at it from a cooling, it's like, we obviously designed the car for the maximum condition, the worst case condition. And our worst case condition for the cooling system is 38 degrees C or 100 degree F racing on the track. With, and this is something I forgot to mention, and thank you for asking that question, because it gives me a chance to throw this out there, because it is something that all of us that are on the C8, especially on the powertrain cooling side, are really proud of, is that this car, like all the other Corvettes in C8, are capable of running on the track in race condition at 100 degree F ambient with the air conditioning turned on to 72 degrees. And that's a huge accomplishment, because it takes a fair amount of work to accomplish that. Oh yeah, that's one other thing that I didn't mention with this one, is that this AC compressor on the eRay is the larger 170cc compressor, like we have on the Z06, for different reasons, but basically the same ultimate goal. If you look at the Z51, it has a 140cc compressor, AC compressor, whereas this one, which has the same pulley ratio, we use 170 because we need more mass flow of the refrigerant to cool the battery, because we've added that additional heat load from the battery itself. Okay, did I answer your question? Yes, did I answer your question? Good. Anything else? I thought I heard somebody ask another question. Yes, no, anything? Over here. Yes. Question is, people are upgrading their exhaust systems, I assume you mean from catback, and will that work with this vehicle, or will it affect our system? We were talking about this earlier. It does not void your warranty for your exhaust, for your engine, if you go catback. Obviously the warranty doesn't cover aftermarket exhaust. It really won't change, the cooling system for the eRay or the cooling for the car in general. Just makes it noisier, sure. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah, go ahead. Yes. The question is the high wing accessory that's available on Z07 available on this? And I don't think it is. Hey, Mike. Is the high wing that's on the Z07 available on this? No, I didn't think so, no. Anything else? Technical questions? No? Yes, sir. How does the performance of the E-Ray compare to the base Corvette? Well, as you know, this is the quickest Corvette ever, right? So the quarter mile time for the Z51 is listed at 11.2. The quarter mile time for this is listed at 10.5. It's a substantial change. That's a substantial drop. I mean, my old days, I would say that for every 10th you're a car length away. So 7 car lengths difference, that's a lot in a race. From an overall performance on the track, one of the things that I can speak to from another person and a little bit understanding the chassis, Mike knows a lot more about the chassis than I do. Mike Bailey is the program engineering manager. Ask him questions if we have any. But the suspension on this car is not as stiff as the Z06, but it is slightly stiffer than a Z51. And it's got bigger tires. So if you look at it from a racetrack standpoint, it will absolutely go faster on a racetrack than a Z51, if nothing else because you've got bigger tires, notably larger tires. I will mention this because this is something I think is really fascinating because you asked the question about performance. We have one of our development engineers, really good guy, highly respected, his name is Rich. Rich has been developing Corvettes for generations. He first started developing Corvettes in C5, he was actually on C4, but has been working them all along. And if you were to ask Rich what his experience is racing these cars on the track at General Motors, and he's one of a couple dozen that is qualified to do that in the company, is that he will tell you that the Z06 is crazy fast, and he loves driving it, and that if you want to set the fastest lap, you drive a Z06. He said, but in his experience of driving in Michigan, because we live in Michigan, with a change in track conditions from morning to the afternoon, from early in the session to late in the session, he says one of the things that he absolutely loves with the E-Ray is having the front wheel engaged in traction and power application, is he said it provides a much more consistent exit out of the corner, and it builds a tremendous amount of confidence. So from his own personal preference, he said if I were to race a car, it's not as fast as the Z06, he said, but it builds a lot of confidence on the track. And I did hear that from a lot of the development engineers, that when they got this thing live and got it racing around the track, they were really impressed with what it was capable of doing. Yes, sir. Yeah, the question is if you're doing launch control, are the front wheels involved? Yes. Yep. It's one of the reasons why the 0 to 60 time on this car is a 10th quicker than the Z06, because the electric motor has instant torque, so it allows the power to be applied sooner, and the car starts moving forward with that 160 horsepower while the inertia of the gas engine catches up, and then it starts propelling. It is pretty special. The linear acceleration on this car is something else. It is, it's a completely different experience than a Z06. It's really cool. Anything else? I don't want to miss anybody. Here, yes? No? Yes? Over here? Yes, sir.
What are they starting off?
Price-wise? The E-Ray 1LZ Coupe starts at 102.5. 2LT is, I don't know. I got a reference. I'm phoning home. I'm gonna try and get a. Don't know.
And when are they going to be ready for order?
$5 to $7 grand more.
When they be ready for ordering? Like,
Oh, when you can start ordering them?
Yeah.
We think October. Is that what we think? October. We believe October. I'm in engineering, so I don't get involved in that stuff. So don't take anything I say when it comes to ordering take it with a grain of salt. Anybody else? Question is, why do we put carbon fiber brakes on it? Well, there's always the performance aspect of it, because it is pretty amazing. And I think secondly, because it looks really cool. I think the market really kind of likes those and likes the way they look. So, yeah, but they are really cool. So, anything else? Oh yeah, the question is with the engineering vehicles that we have on the road right now, we call them captured test fleet. You'll see the sticker on a lot of our cars. It's over on the left-hand side. Are we learning anything where we communicate that back to the development team and enhance the car? 100% yes. That is what we do. That's why we have the captured test fleet. That's why the company spends the money to get us out there so that we can drive them, so we can start learning and making changes. Because even though we extensively validate on the track, in the lab, these vehicles all over the place, there's a lot of work that's done to make sure that they function properly. There's always those conditions that as a normal person driving the car in just day-to-day life, we discover, hey, you know what, when I did this, I didn't like the way this transitioned. So we write it up, it gets assigned to the engineer who's responsible for that. They contact us, we talk it through, they go back, they look at their information. If there was data available, they'll download it, they'll review it, and then they make changes to what their software or their calibration or whatever it is they want. Absolutely, we do it all the time. Austin, who is here, has a meeting. We meet, I think, once a week on these reviews, and we keep it updated. It's just a running topic. It's something we do the entire launch period. So yes, it is a main focus of many of the people that are here, for sure. Absolutely. Yes, sir. Question is, what percentage of the cars on the line are eRays? Well, right now we're not in regular production, so we're doing the launch process. So we go through a series of builds. They have different titles. We are in our last phase of that, and right now, like if you were to walk in on Friday to Bowling Green and look at the percentage of eRays on the line, it would be 0, because we're not building. But when we do, it's a limited quantity. It's not really a percentage. We identify how many builds we want to do for that build week, and we run through those builds. I'm sorry? And we have to have the parts, but it's all coordinated. I mean, it's amazing how much energy and effort goes into the material handling and processing. Bowling Green does an amazing job to keep things flowing. Oh, question is, how many Z06s are on the line? That is a good question. I would say, I was looking at our booklet, and our booklet said that the Z06 population is about 11% of the total production. So I'm just going to take a wild guess that it's approximately 11%. Good answer. All right. Yes, sir. You got another question? Question is, can you get one at any Chevy dealer? I don't think you can get it at any Chevy dealer. Chevy dealers have to have allocations to get eRays. Who gets them and what their quantities are, I am nowhere near. Oh, for service? Technically, Lane, for service, they got to be a certified dealer to service Corvettes, right? Okay. Got to be a certified dealer for Corvettes. Thank you. Just wanted to make sure. Got another question? Yes, sir. Ride height. Yep. I don't know that this one does. The question is does this one have E60, which is the lift system, and it does not. Yeah, the question is this clearance the normal clearance for this? Yeah, for the nose. But what I'm getting to, the question is relative to the clearance. I wouldn't look at it here because the ground has got some undulations. But this is a standard build, and we talk about ride height when we measure these, and we measure them. Engineer by the name of Charlie tracks this, and we measure it from the bottom through the center line of the axle to this bottom edge of this lip. And I'm fairly confident that this car meets the requirement because it's based on appearance as well as handling capability. So the ride and handling engineers that are working on it will set that number, but also based on making sure that it works right with the tires. So this is pretty much how the car will sit. I wouldn't look at that gap there because I don't know that we're on a flat ground. Anything else? I'll keep answering questions. I'm okay talking, if you haven't noticed. Yes, sir. The question is, are these normal wheels? Yes. This is unique for eRay. I really like them. I think maybe my personal, I like the polished ones. My favorite. Yeah, they got polished ones. In fact, if you look at the cacti green one in the back, it's got these that are polished. They're gorgeous. I think they're absolutely beautiful. In fact, I wish we had them on everything. Okay, anything else?
So we, sorry, last announcement here. So today is John Albert's birthday. He's 97 years old today. So, looks amazing. So we were gonna sing happy birthday to him real quick, so hopefully you guys will join us. So I can't sing, so you got Devin?
Well, I can't sing either. I'll get us started, but I'm gonna need you guys to chime in, all right? Happy birthday to